The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's Thursday, August the 20th, 2026. We're live here at Children's Health Defense at CHD TV for Financial Rebellion. We do not have Catherine this week, but we have Carolyn, we have Renette, we have Twyla, we have the team. So welcome back. We've missed you both, actually, haven't we, Carolyn?
Yes, absolutely. Particularly Twyla, who wasn't with us last time with Renette.
Yeah.
And she has lots of information to share with us, unfortunately.
I know, but it's good that we're hearing this. But first of all, a few announcements. So tonight for movie night, we are playing Vaxxed 3. It's 6 p.m. Eastern, so get on there, chat, and watch this. And we do need to keep supporting those that reported that their loved ones were killed during COVID in hospital as well as by the shot. So we need to keep that up. Remember, Ron Johnson and his hearing, do submit as well your stories to him. He's really going to try and sort something out for you all, because that was barbaric. And to also remind you, our Roku channel is really looking cool over there on Roku. So it's free. You just download chd.tv and you will be able to watch us live with this show, all our movies, and Duty to Disobey coming really soon for you to be able to watch on Roku. So do get CHD TV downloaded on there. Okay, well, I think to start with, we have a viewer question. So let's have a look at that and get my glasses on. Okay, here we go. It says, I'm old enough to remember when HIPAA was an authorization to release information to another person, e.g. a spouse, etc. Now, there is nothing about who you want to have access to your information. It is only about giving your permission to whoever wants it. After hearing something about how grocery stores use information and sell it to make millions of dollars, I took the leap to assume the medical establishment does the same thing. Can you do anything about this? Who's going to answer that?
Well, I think I can answer that. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about HIPAA. And even from the very beginning, the very statement, the first sentence of that statement, I remember when it was about giving permission, it was never about giving permission. That is what people thought, and that is what people still think. But if you read carefully the statement that you are signing, you are saying that you have read or understood or received the notice of privacy practices. And that's the only thing that you're signing. And so you have no control over where your data goes because of HIPAA. You know, states can protect you from HIPAA by passing their own state laws. But as it stands right now, most states don't have laws that supersede HIPAA. And so HIPAA is considered a permissive data sharing rule, which allows all of this data to be shared without your consent. And so there's nothing you can do about it at the moment except protect your information. Refuse to sign the form so you don't participate in this massive deception of the American people that this has anything to do with privacy, which it doesn't. And then, of course, you can pay cash. And there are some provisions in HIPAA that say if you pay cash, they won't share it with your health plan if you ask them not to. But they can still share the information with the government.
Okay, anyone else want to add anything? I think we probably
Twyla, you were interested in an anecdote that I told you about before the show about how I had poison ivy and got a steroid at an urgent care that I had never been to before. And then I had an eye appointment with a brand new company, and they knew about the steroid that I had gotten, and I'm not plugged into it was not in an electronic database that I knew about. And so you explained how that might happen.
Yes. So HIPAA So several things. HIPAA allowed the digitization of all of your data, and this was part of the plan because everybody wanted access to it. It's considered a gold mine or the 21st century version of oil. Really, it really is. People are making so much money off of your data, but by allowing all the data to be digitized, then when President Obama came along and mandated the electronic health record, then all of this digital data could be made very accessible through these electronic health record systems. But added to that was all the money going to build state health information exchanges, as well as the National Medical Records Exchange, which is called the eHealth Exchange. And your viewers can find it at ehealthexchange.org, and they can look up their state and find out all the participants in the eHealth Exchange and see whether their hospital, their doctor, their clinic is part of that. Thanks, Lou, for bringing that up. And so this is widespread, and people are so surprised when they go to a new doctor and the doctor has every medication that they've ever taken and diagnoses that they've not even talked about. You know, the thing is, it's very hard to get out of this system, but you can find doctors that don't participate, like on our wedge of health freedom at jointhewedge.com. This is about protecting yourself and getting your state legislators to realize that HIPAA does not protect your privacy. See, that's the thing. You know, the American public thinks HIPAA protects their privacy, and they're wrong. But legislators believe HIPAA protects their privacy, and they too are wrong. But that's why oftentimes in state laws, the state law simply conforms to HIPAA, giving away all of your medical privacy rights in state law by conforming to the federal HIPAA privacy rule, which is not a privacy rule, as I said. So your situation shows exactly how all of that data sharing is happening. They haven't asked your permission in order to grab that data. It could also be part of the drug prescription monitoring systems that are around the country. Every state has one, and oftentimes they connect with each other. Now, those are for scheduled medications, but they also include things like Sudafed. And then there are the connections to the vaccine registries so that they know whether you've gotten a vaccine or not, and connections to the pharmacies, right? So all of this stuff is being connected, and everybody is surprised, and they think, well, what about HIPAA? Well, HIPAA is the reason. It's the reason, and people need to be protected from HIPAA.
Right. Well, thank you. I also had to fill out a form whether I had certain conditions, and it was electronic, and it had about 1,000 things that you check if you have any of them. And one of them was, I've had a COVID-19 vax, and the other one says I haven't had, and you have to check one or the other. Do they have ways of knowing whether you have had the jab, so that if you lie, there is some accusation or something?
Well, let's just start from the get-go of your question. You are not obligated to answer any one of those 1,000 questions, and you can decide what you will and will not answer. Now, this becomes trickier if they have it on an iPad or that sort of a tablet, but then you can take it up to the desk and say, you know, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not going to answer these. You can give me a paper copy, and I will decide which ones I will answer. The reason it becomes difficult with an iPad is because often you can't get to the next screen, and so you can never get to the point of registration. So sometimes that requires the manager. I cannot tell you the number of times I have gone up and I've said, you know, I'm not comfortable with this. I need the paper copies. And they say, well, we don't have paper copies. And I say, well, yes, you do. You can find them. And then if all else fails, I'll say, give me your manager. And one time I got the supervisor, and that was really interesting. And this is great for your case, Carolyn, because the supervisor, when I got the supervisor, she said, well, actually, the only thing you have to sign is the consent to be treated. That's the only thing you have to sign. Right. And that is the truth of the matter. So just remember that in every form that you have and every form that you receive, you do not have to divulge this information. They have no right to have it. They're just data gathering for the systems, for the corporations, for the state health information exchanges, and for the government. And they get sort of like bonus points, as it were, for gathering all this kind of information because their corporations, like it when they do, might pay them more because they get all the answers. It's hard to say exactly, but yeah, you have to go in and fight for it, but you can do it and you can avoid all of that profiling that's going on when you're vulnerable. It's really an exploitation of you as a patient, saying that we need all of this before we'll treat you. That's just wrong, and it's not good, and you don't have to comply.
Well, I think this is a test of your assertiveness. And, when you have a new relationship, you're hesitant to make a big deal out of something and damage the future relationship with somebody who's going to have your eye with a knife on it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you're one of those people. Let me see. But I think, that's the unfortunate part. I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I've taken care of lots of patients in the emergency room. And, every patient is vulnerable. It doesn't matter whether you're about to have eye surgery or if you need a medication for a sinus infection. It doesn't matter. You cannot get what you need without them. And so you're in a vulnerable position, and that's why it is exploitation. But you have to come in. I will tell you, we've got a new item to use for the ambient listening that's going on, recording every word that you say and every word that your doctor says, and maybe your child is in there with you and it's recording all those conversations, right? And so we have now a door hanger to put on the outside of the exam room, or just have in your purse and hand it over. Because some people in this vulnerable situation of depending on the doctor and the nurses and not wanting to perturb people because they need care, right? They aren't going to put it on the outside of the door. But they could just hand it and say, I don't want to be recorded. And this is an important thing, too, in relation to the collection of information, Carolyn. Imagine every word that you say. That you're in pain, that you say to your husband. The Mayo Clinic is using ambient listening in the ER. So unless you say no, they are just going to be recording away your entire ER conversation. Every scream you make, everything that happens is going to be recorded, all without your consent. So I just tell people, every time you go to the doctor and when you make the appointment, you should say, when you go to the desk, you should say, am I going to be recorded? Are there any recording devices in my room? And every person that comes into the room, you have to ask them the same question. So this is what you can do to protect your privacy. And when they say things like, one doctor said to me, I said, well, he said, you're okay with this, right? He comes in with his phone. He said, you're okay if I record this, right? I said, no. He looked at me and goes, but it won't be as complete of a visit. And I just looked at him and he finally put the phone away, right? Because see, you have to argue with somebody who you are depending on. And you just have to come in with that mindset to protect yourself, because they're not going to protect you. They're not going to protect your privacy. They might help you with whatever you need, but they're not going to protect your privacy rights unless you do it yourself.
That was so well said, Twyla. Quite right. I think the problem starts, I honestly think it starts from school. I mean, I was such an unruly child, but until I learned to obey authority, and then you grow up and you that's still in you. You don't want to make a fuss, and you really have. That's what we've got to change with the next generation. You've got to teach your kids that they have to. They don't have to be rude, but they have to question. And if it doesn't feel right in their gut, then go with that. Because you're right, they don't have our best interests at heart.
No, and you have a right to question. See, that's the thing. You have a right to question. And even if they look at you askance, and even if they pause and give you a strange look, or they say, well, what's the problem, right? You are not the problem. You have a right to question. You always have a right to question, and you have a right to disagree, and you have a right to say no, and you have a right to refuse. You have all these rights, and you have to remember that you have them.
Quite right. Right, now I think we've got a little flock camera video. We're going to start with that, and we're going to start talking about flock. Am I right? Yes.
There are freaking flock cameras at the gun range. This is the entrance to the gun range. So they got you coming in. They also got you going out. Today's Wednesday, so the gun range is closed until 2. So there's nobody here. Now these are in the driveway to the gun range. They're not out. They're not out on the road. This is only catching cars and trucks coming in the driveway to the gun range, and right there's the range. Unbelievable.
So that's private property, right?
I mean, I presume so. I don't know.
They're popping up all over in front of gun ranges, shooting ranges. It's happening all across the country, by the way. This is all over the place. This is not unusual.
The brief says it's in the public part.
I don't know. I have not seen specifically, but it's a good question.
Yeah, because I would think of all the people in the country who are careful about privacy, it's the gun people. And so I would be really surprised if a gun range agrees, unless paid to do so, to have something monitoring their customers.
Yeah, it's shocking, especially because the police department, a lot of them are gun lovers, right? They go to shooting ranges. So why would they? And somebody has to approve these cameras. Somebody in the city or county is giving authority. So it's got to go through a certain protocol. So it is definitely happening. And it's surprising that a sheriff, law enforcement, police department would allow this at their own gun ranges, shooting ranges.
Renette, the problem we've got right now is that, and I mean this, the majority of people who don't know any better, they think these flock cameras are great because they are catching bad people. Right. And especially with that gun range, they would say things like, well, that's great. So we know if a baddie goes in. That's the mentality of what we're dealing with right now with the flock cameras.
Correct. However, that is changing rapidly. People are waking up really fast. And I can go into the whole flock information if you guys want to. There's a ton to report. Okay. So I'll give you an example here. Just this last Tuesday, I'm in Nevada City, California. Next to me is Grass Valley. And we had the city reverse their flock contract, essentially. So what happened was they had a city council meeting, and Police Chief Gamelgard, who I really like and respect, came up and basically said, we're going to be removing the flock cameras starting tomorrow. So 80 residents had showed up, packed the chamber, and instead of going up there and making the argument, 25 went up to the mic and said, thank you very much. So what happened was there was a resident group of individuals who had a deflock working group, and after 18 months of looking through record requests, they found out there's two different conflicting information, but it was between 3.9 million individual searches. Someone else said, no, actually, I dug further. There's 7.5 million individual searches in Grass Valley alone. This is a town of 14,000 people. So this is huge. And so what happened ultimately is that they realized there's been hundreds of thousands of queries per month, right, in Grass Valley, and only a small fraction of them were actually through the city, the police department itself. So he realized that these ALPRs are essentially a massive Fourth Amendment violation, and they didn't have to argue it. And so they're like, we're taking them down. The next day, they started taking them down. Now, we still have them here in Nevada City, even on top of our city hall, and most people don't even know this. But the thing is that Flock knows now there's a massive, massive campaign that's going on around the country where flock cameras are being destroyed, they're being vandalized, they're being cut down, they're being removed by people in the middle of the night. In fact, I know this coming Halloween, there's a big movement to dress up in Halloween costumes and go out and remove the flock cameras. But what's happening is that flock is now going into other avenues. So there's a flock presentation that was actually obtained through a Georgia Public Records request that was sent to the Attorney General, where the company planned to use dash cams in hundreds of thousands of Uber, Lyft, and delivery vehicles. They're going to turn them into this roaming surveillance vehicles to collect all this data. And so this was found through a FOIA, and basically they put a squash on it. However, Flock said that they're still considering this kind of outreach and doing this. Well, I have to say this, if Flock actually does use the dash cams for Uber and Lyfts, you'll start seeing those vehicles get vandalized as well, because people don't like to be surveyed and spied like this. So the other thing that's quite shocking is there's already a similar arrangement with what's called bus patrol, which outfits school buses with cameras to see if anybody drives past that little stop sign that comes out when the bus is stopped. However, they're now using that for the police departments to collect information on the roads everywhere you go. So what's happening is because these stationary devices are placed already everywhere and they're being cut down and vandalized and removed, and people are hostile and they're going to the cities and counties saying you need to remove them, Flock is bumping up their game and the law cannot keep up to it. So now Flock's CEO, Garrett Langley, told somebody on a podcaster that the Flock drones are their fastest growing business right now, and it's completely outpacing license plate readers. I think he said under half of these new business accounts are like under half of the forward-looking revenues. So it's the drones that are really, really picking up. And have already like 200 drone as first responders. So we have police departments, we have fire departments, we have hospitals who are now buying drones for quick response, which I don't think is a bad idea as far as quick response. However, there's very little protections put on there. Like, for instance, you should not be able to share this data or keep this data unless there's some kind of warrant, for a particular individual. So there's got to be safety mechanisms put on these drones, and there's not whatsoever. But the other thing that's quite upsetting is that these drones are not just reading your license plate. They have thermal imaging, they have high definition cameras, they have such powerful optical zoom cameras that they can actually read a license plate like 2,000 feet away. And so it's gotten so bad and it is so invasive that now, for instance, in France, to give you an idea of how bad this can get, the French police are now using drones that are equipped with thermal imaging to locate farmers who refuse to vaccinate their cattle. That's how it's being used.
Wow.
Right. And so it ends up that despite some communities that are counseling, pausing or reconsidering their Flock contracts, a Flock spokesperson recently said that the company's growth rate remains about 7 times its current churn rate. So even though we have cities and towns saying, no, we don't want this, it ends up that they're actually going out there, and there's 7 times more cities and towns actually putting out the Flock cameras. I think there's over 133,000 Flock cameras throughout the United States.
Yeah, Renee.
Yes,
Go ahead.
go for it.
I just wanted to say that was looking into how do the feds get information that's captured on the Flock cameras, and what I found out is there are 3 different ways. There's the back door, the front door, and the side door.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know whether Flock actually turns information over to automatically without telling the police departments, and apparently that's not actually the concern. The concern is that the police department, or whatever department who has it, is voluntarily, perhaps, let's say the feds call the police department and the policeman goes in and does a search and turns over the information. I think that's the side door. There's the back door that may be a setting on what they've signed up for that gives permission to send it automatically to, for example, ICE. And then, there's the front door where ICE may come in and just ask for the information, and the enforcement agency just turns it over. So this is why it's so important that you're talking about being active at the local level and knowing what your local people are doing. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think through a city council or whatever the board is, or the governing people that are elected locally, ought to be watching what the different departments are doing and knowing what kind of contracts they're entering into, and then exercising some kind of control over what they can agree to do and what they can't agree to do. But the other thing is that there's, I guess, a very large network of information. So this stuff is going over across state lines. It's going, somebody in New Jersey is getting information that's collected in California.
Oh, there's no parameters. There's no stopping it. And in fact, you're not allowed to have the interagencies do this. It's completely illegal. But so right now what we have, Carolyn, is we have like 100 cities that have rejected the ALPR systems. And what's good is that because of this pushback, Flock's response, they announced on August 13th, the company will recommend agencies cut data retention from 30 days to 7 days. And they're also adding these particular tools, which is kind of referring to the side door and the back door, that restrict agency to agency sharing and also flag potential abuse searches. So this is a win because of public pressure. And that's good because there's already cases, and this is from Washington Post, of 50 police officers have been accused of using the cameras to stalk women. And this is, and they stalk people at rallies and at protests and so on. And so to let you know how quickly this is moving, there's a company called Skydio that people are not, or I think it's actually called Skydio.
Skydio, yeah.
Skydio. And this is a California drone maker that sent over 100 drones to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and they have a contract, and so they sent them over there to basically monitor and survey all of the Palestinians in Palestine. So now they hold contracts in nearly every major U.S. city in America right now, and they're backed by Israeli-linked investors and defense partners. And so these companies have more than 800 law enforcement contracts and security agency contracts across the U.S. And that's up from 320 of just last March. That's how fast it's growing. And so what's so difficult is that, as I was saying, the technology is advancing before the laws can be put into place to protect ourselves. And so this is really where we have the most protection and say is on the ground at your city council, county supervisor meetings, and you do the public records request, or what's called FOIA, and everywhere else but in California. And what you do is you actually say, okay, we want some restrictions, right? So, in fact, like for instance, New Hampshire is one of the more gold standards. They have the flock cameras have to be purged within 3 minutes unless there's some triggering events that occur. California actually has what's called SB 34, and this is all about the ALPR Privacy Act. However, it's not being enforced. We've got the legislation, the law's there. It's just not being enforced. And there is a San Francisco Superior Court case around flock and a violation that's similar to sharing with out-of-state federal agencies. So that's happening as well right now. But on a whole other level, and I'm on Substack, Renette Sem's Foghorn Express Substack, and I'm doing a piece on it today. Just last Tuesday, Comcast launched what's called Xfinity Shield. I have Comcast. I have a modem right here. However, my modem is turned off. The Wi-Fi, I should say, is turned off. I am Etherneted into my devices. But this is a free piece that is now available to all Comcast customers. And it is a Wi-Fi motion detector. And what it does is it turns this gateway modem in your living room into a motion detector. No camera, no mic, no permission, no knowledge. So what it does is your house is full of radio waves, and the average household, which is shocking to me, has 36 connected devices. I don't have one in my house. I turn my phone on when I need it and I turn it off. Computer, same thing. It's hardwired in. People have printers, they have refrigerators, they have thermostats, they have all these different things, and they're putting out a radio frequency, which is really kind of equivalent to you being in a pond of water. If you move in that pond of water, it creates a ripple effect. Well, guess what? That router feels the ripple, and it creates an image of you and all the objects in your house and what you're doing. So basically, in this Comcast, in the small print, it says Comcast may disclose information generated by your Wi-Fi motion to third parties without further notice, right? In connection with law enforcement investigations. However, Comcast is saying, well, we don't record video, we don't capture images or identify individuals. Well, these are, by the way, this is software choices, right? This is not a limit on technology. It ends up that this technology has been in our modem since 2013, but now Comcast has decided to turn it on. And so German researchers just recently published a report saying across 197 individuals, 99.5% accuracy was occurred in identifying the individuals from ordinary Wi-Fi signals. So your phone doesn't have to be on. You don't need a network password. In fact, if you're walking past a cafe with Wi-Fi, that Wi-Fi is picking you up passing by that cafe. I do not have Wi-Fi on my modem, but my neighbors do, and because of that, somebody can come on by, they got the right equipment, which is really easy to do, because this stuff is not encrypted. They can actually see me inside my room, in my bedroom, on the toilet, whatever, right? Whatever you're doing in your house is now accessible to anybody and everybody. And so basically it's not encrypted. It's using, like the 2.4 gigahertz, like the 2G to 3G. It's not even 5G. 5G millimeter wave does not work like the older frequencies that we're used to. And so this is something that's been going on now for quite some time, except for now they've made it available to all Comcast Xfinity users. So I actually went on AI saying, well, AI, this is really quite horrific because essentially every Wi-Fi out there is surveilling everybody through our walls. What can we do? And it's like, well, it's kind of difficult because the court cases are saying, if it's specific for a warrant or some kind of police investigation, it's you've got to get a warrant. But this is for general public use, and because it's classified as general public use, they can collect this information. So to be quite frank, folks, there's a cultural shift we have to create. And I think we should talk about this as much as possible. And that is that people don't realize that as soon as Wi-Fi routers came along, we just turned them on and we keep them on all the time without question. And what people need to do is they need to start turning them off when they don't use them. Turn them off when they go to bed at night. Turn them off when they're not on their phones or they're on their computers. And also really start to get your neighbors to do the same thing. Because like you don't keep your microwave oven on 24/7. You don't keep your television on 24/7. You only turn it on when you use it. And there's this cultural thing around the world where we just have our Wi-Fi on all the time. Well, now that we know the Wi-Fi is spying on us and everyone walking down our street and our neighbors through their walls, I think people have to really, really consider, do I need to have my Wi-Fi on all the time? Or maybe I just turn it on when we need it.
Renette, I know this is a really sort of kind of a stupid question, but who is spying on us? So is it?
Well, essentially law enforcement can collect this information. Anybody who has the know-how, and it's not that difficult, can actually drive down your street and they can actually see the imaging in your house. It's not encrypted. It's that dangerous.
That should petrify everybody.
It's so Orwellian. It's like literally we're in an open air prison. You no longer, as it currently stands, folks, even if you do not have, like, again, my Wi-Fi is turned off on my modem. I'm still not protected because I have modems on either side of me with Wi-Fi. People can now look in the walls of my home at any time of the day. Your children, right? What you're doing? Are you having sex with your spouse? Are you having an argument? Seriously, are you drinking? Are you smoking? I mean, whatever, right? Are you having are you're kicking your dog? I mean, like all this stuff is now available to anybody who drives by and has the equipment, and especially to law enforcement.
I mean, I'm speechless.
It's horrific. It's literally our own devices are now spying on us, and it's not just available to law enforcement, which is bad enough, or agencies or anybody who wants to, but it's available to anybody who has the device, and it's really easy to do. It's not encrypted, and you just have to drive by and you'll pick up inside everyone's homes.
Twyla, are you?
I was going to say, one thing I'd like to say about that is, as they have digitized everything and Wi-Fi is digital, Wi-Fi is all tech, right? As they have done this for convenience and for all sorts of things that it has been sold at, they have really created a huge national threat to the nation and a huge security threat to the nation and a huge security threat to each individual. So all of this is sold as convenience and efficiency and safety and all of these things. But the fact of the matter is, just look at what hackers can do. You and I don't know how to hack. Right? But the hackers who know how to hack it into the Pentagon, white databases, and all of those kind of places. We have just, the country itself, I guess, in just moving in this direction, has just made such a huge risk for everyone in the country and for the nation as a whole by digitizing everything and just moving willy-nilly into technology, without really any second thoughts or really in consideration of what this could do long term.
Well, and to add to that, sorry to interrupt you, Carolyn, to really demonstrate how dangerous this really is, when we started this war in Iran and we took out the head of the Iranian regime, they were using essentially these license plate readers and all these cameras, surveillance cameras, to find out where the generals and colonels and so on of the army were traveling, to take them out instantaneously. They were using this very system that's being used against us to take out these high-ranking military officials. That's what we're talking about. And there's absolutely nothing stopping us right now for this happening to protesters, to the unvaccinated, those who are political dissidents, people for running for certain offices. There's no firewall of protection. I mean, there's no walls of protection. You used to have privacy behind your closed door and the walls of your own home. You have privacy. That officially, as of Tuesday, is now gone.
Well, the one thing that I would say is we are a country with a constitution, and I think there's something about the term of the day, right? But war is war, and there's all sorts of tools that are used in war that are not used on our homeland, right? And war is a different thing. But when it comes to using these kind of things against our constitutional rights in this country, there is a distinct difference here. And it's as though there is no difference whatsoever because nobody's watching, nobody's thinking about it. And thank you, Renette, for doing what you do to really bring all of this to all of our ears and minds. But the American people just really don't understand, and they're just believing the security and convenience and efficiency, and they're not seeing the net.
They're not seeing the net. It's an invisible net. And once it comes down fast. Yes, Carolyn.
Catherine would say Gaza is a method. Now,
Yes.
Palantir has drones in Gaza with AI that are basically dropping bombs or somehow obliterating apartment buildings where they're suspected Hamas people. So, that capability, imagine that comes into the United States. And there are machine gun equipped drones or whatever. We know Flock. And also, it's not just Flock. There's a company called Axon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, AXON,
Yes.
which is the direct competitor to Flock. So don't think that if you cancel a Flock contract, you necessarily have it all. So one of the things I wanted to ask Twyla is, do you have any concern that the medical data will get into the same systems that the law enforcement people are using? And I don't know how high above the Flock camera the centralized data system is, but I assume it's pretty centralized, shall we say. Do you have any concern that there's private medical information that can basically be part of all of this and available to anybody who has access on an enforcement basis?
So that's an interesting thing, again, to go back to HIPAA, right? Because if you go back to HIPAA, what you see are things like the language which was originally called the 12 National Priority Purposes. And the 12 National Priority Purposes include things like law enforcement, administrative hearings, judicial review, public health purposes. Well, public health purposes can really extend a long way. I remember when I read a federal regulation, it was a federal regulation, but it was the FAA saying that they had a right to access medical records for public health purposes. So this is the airports, right? And so I think that when you have digitized all of this, and HIPAA doesn't allow for you to say where your data goes, and allows all of those who hold your data to decide whether to share it or not. That's the thing people don't understand about HIPAA. There are only two required shares, with you as the patient, and then with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to validate that the entity, the clinic, the hospital, the lab, whomever, is following HIPAA. Those are the only two required shares, but everything else is permissive. So those who hold your data can share it as they wish without your consent. And that is what the Notice of Privacy Practices says. And now they differ. Some clinics have more limited notice of privacy forms, and some have more expansive. But the reality is that the law would allow all this sort of thing. The law enforcement is somewhat limited in the rule, but there are ways, as you were saying, Carolyn, back doors, front doors, and side doors, in order to access the information that is sitting there and available. One thing I thought about is with the medical records and how they're talking, they always ask whether you have guns in the homes. And they say, well, this is a safety thing, for children in the home and all that kind of business. Really, but it is a collection of data of who owns guns. And so people should never, ever answer that. But with the flock cameras outside of that gun range, I thought that was interesting too, because what they could see is how often different people actually practice. Who are the most experienced shooters? Who come and go the most often? Who have the most money to have guns and ammunition? And what does this mean? I mean, this is a whole profiling thing above and beyond, your license plate. This is really about who's got guns, how often do they visit, who do they come along with, where are the connections in the gun community? I mean, it's just, it's incredible. And the medical record just adds to that by asking the question whether you have guns in your home. Now, since we're talking about HIPAA, I just thought that I would mention that there is an agency who is now demanding that 100 hospitals share their emergency room records of patients that come to the emergency room with the, I'm looking at the name again, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And they are doing it for their injury surveillance system, the federal injury surveillance system. And they want to be able to put out, this is what they say, this is their rationale, that they should be able to put out near real-time alerts through this commission about dangerous products that might send you to the emergency room. But the fact of the matter is, when you go to the emergency room, you do not want it to be a direct conduit to a federal government agency about the fact that you were there and why you were there and what your diagnosis was. This was being done on the sly, as it were, until somebody must have shared it with a reporter. And I think it was at Kaiser Family Foundation News, KFF News. And then they came out with it, and then the federal agency became public with it. And so that's another thing to ask your hospital, your ER. Are you sharing my information? Now, the hospitals have actually opposed this move, but under HIPAA, they are perfectly free to share this without your consent.
I think really there's so many alarming pieces of information we're sharing today, but I think the most alarming for me is the fact that the French police were using thermal imaging to locate farmers who refuse to vaccinate their cattle.
Terrible.
That to me right there is telling me everything I need to know. It's like, if you can do it for the cattle, and we're chattel in their eyes, then they could and would do it for us. And so, and the drones that they are flying overhead do use thermal imaging, which means, again, from the sky, they can look down through your rooftop and see you in your homes. So the invasion is huge. And I'm going to go back to, folks, we've got to be the ears and the eyes for all of this. And that starts, once again, at the local level. You've got to make your elected officials aware of this, because I can tell you right now, they're oblivious. Unless you bring it, to public comment during meetings, they have no idea how bad this is. It's our job to be the ears and the eyes to protect our own Constitution. And so what we need to do is go to our counties, go to our cities, do those, freedom of information requests or public records requests. And I would go on and I would actually use AI for this thing. AI, I need to do this tell me exactly what questions to ask. I'm concerned about our constitutional protections and rights, and it'll give you a whole list of highly, highly detailed questions. This is when you want to use AI. Use that tool against them. And you send that in, and you're going to be shocked. The fact that our little town next door, Grass Valley, had millions of searches, not a few hundred, not a few thousand, millions of agencies coming in sideways in the back doors in a town of 14,000. Imagine what they're doing in major cities. And who are they searching? My God, like, seriously, are they, I'm outspoken. I go into Grass Valley. Were they watching me and seeing where I was going, what restaurants I was going to, who I was hanging with? I mean, what are they certain? We don't have that much crime. And they said, well, we caught 100 criminals. Well, you caught 100 criminals, but there was millions of searches on law-abiding individuals who are just going about their business. So it's important that this is where the rubber meets the road, and we've got to protect ourselves. Then what we also have to do is, if your state does not have legislation in the pipes to put those added firewalls and protections, you got to go out there and you have to start lobbying at your capital and get somebody to author the bills. And or like California, we've got the legislation, the bill's there, right? The law's been passed, but there's no enforcement. So you've got to actually have the enforcement arm as well. So this is on us, folks. This is on us. And as I think Twyla was saying, or maybe it was Polly, it's been done so silently, so quietly that it's invisible. It's really like the Wi-Fi radio frequencies are invisible. You can't see them. And so they're innocuous. They're not a danger. I don't see anything. And yet now we're seeing how it's playing out, and everyone in their own homes, apartments, houses, doesn't matter, are no longer safe, and they no longer have privacy. And so this is on us. And so I'm going to encourage everybody to go out there and start getting involved, because there's not one household, there's not one person who is not being exposed to this.
Should we do the term of the day before we run out of time? Yeah, the term of the day is constitutional privacy. And if you know anything about the Constitution and read it, you will not find anything in the U.S. Constitution that says you have a right to privacy. There are some states, I want to guess, 10 states that have some form of protection of privacy in their state constitutions, and that's something to lobby for also. But the U.S. Constitution does not guarantee privacy. But through the Supreme Court case law, initially it came up, the issue of privacy came up in cases involving abortion, the Ogle-Gefelter, whatever that case is, involving same-sex marriages, a lot of things having to do with sexual conduct, that sort of thing. And so the idea that looking at the Constitution and case law, but primarily the Constitution, you take various provisions of the Constitution and you read them together, and there is what the Supreme Court justice who wrote the opinion called the penumbra rights. It's a penumbra. You can tell from the context of all the different things that are in the Constitution that privacy should, yes, legal context, it refers to implied rights derived explicitly stated guarantees in the Constitution. And it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, a long time ago. This is from a very long time ago. So a lot of people think there is an express constitutional protection of privacy, but the Dodds case in particular, some of the, which was the one that struck down Roe v. Wade, sort of indicated there are justices that are stepping back from reading the privacy as expansively as has been the case in the past. And so there are indications that the Supreme Court may be backing away from some of the assumptions that privacy is protected. Now, on the other hand, there is a recent case that came out in June of 2026 called Chatry that involved the police department going in and getting geolocation data. And this is called geofencing, where they go in and find out all the cell phones in a particular area, a mile from where the grocery store was robbed, and they get information on all the cell phones in the area. And then they go to another step and have to take another piece of information to find out individual people. And the Chatry case basically said that there is some right to privacy, that they can't use these geofencing warrants that allow them to just search for everybody who's within a particular area, to basically put them under suspicion. So there are things going in both directions. There also is some federal legislative proposals to protect some of this. There's a Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act and a Government Surveillance Reform Act at the federal level. But, state, it's a good idea to get your state legislators on board with doing things to protect. Now, Catherine would tell you if she were here that we're working on model legislation for states to adopt that would say, that would grant people who are in jurisdiction of the state a right to a non-digital life. And if you can imagine that you have a right to a non-digital life at state law, there are a number of things that might that might not be able to be done, particularly by local law enforcement, if there is a right to a non-digital life. And I know that I've been confronted in a lot of cases, for example, making an insurance claim where the only way you can give the photos for the insurance claim is through a cell phone. And so there are lots of situations where you are forced to use cell phones, even as opposed to a computer, to convey information to private parties. And so a right to a non-digital life might allow you to do things in paper or physical form rather than have it done digitally. But this whole digital control grid, the legislation cannot, and even court cases, you know how long it takes to get to the Supreme Court? They can't keep up with it all.
Well, and the thing is that with the geofence case, what they're saying is that this information that's being collected is not separate and isolated from itself, right? So you collect all this data, and every single American now does have a profile, right? It's medical, insurance, driving record, criminal record, marriage record, all this stuff has now been compiled together for a profile. So every single American, I guarantee you, there's a profile of each of us and our children. And that's what they're saying, is that is an invasion of privacy. So having one little camera image here, no big deal. Another, little camera image or license plate reader there, no big deal. But when you compile it all together, all this information is literally your life, your social media, right? Your posts, what you put out, your emails. I mean, for God's sake, our emails are being scanned, our texts are being scanned. This is a massive, massive profile gathering operation. And I guarantee, like the Lavender program, which is the Palantir program, where they're like identifying key opposition members in Palestine, not only were they taking them out, but they're taking out the whole entire apartment complex these people were living in. And so this is what's behind all of this. And that sounds frightful. I wrote a Substack a few weeks ago called The Palestinian of America. And a lot of people got angry saying that's terrible. You're just, you're causing fear and this is unnecessary and it's not true. I'm like, it's already in play. That is the blueprint. And what we're seeing right now with the drones and now with the Wi-Fi and everything else and the police departments and the back doors and the side doors is exactly what we saw go down, right? Go down with Palestine. And you see a lot of Israeli investments. You see a lot of the IDF behind this. We see the possible merger of the U.S. military with the Israeli, IDF. That's insane. You're going to have a hard time arguing something different, that this is not happening. It's a playbook. As Catherine says, it is the playbook. And it's our job and our responsibility for future generations to ensure that that playbook is ripped apart and burned. Seriously, it's horrific. And it's moving very quickly. And you said, Carolyn, the law, legislation, right, tort claims, they take years and years and years. We can't keep up to the technology.
Right. Twyla, do we still have more information about airports that you haven't given us yet? Because I want to make sure that you download everything that we need to know that's happened lately or that you've observed.
Well, I think, the whole Real ID question has all surrounded the airports and whether or not you're able to fly. And so it's been very interesting to fly and actually see what I see. So what you see there on the screen is what was up for probably, 3 years, 4 years. Every time you flew, you saw this poster here, be your Real ID self. But I think the agency, the Homeland Security, is making some concessions. Now, if we move to the other one, Lou, before this one, is is this is the one that you're now seeing up at the airports more than any other one. Because see, they have less than a year to get to their total deadline of having 100% compliance with Real ID on May 5th of 2027. And so that's not going to happen. And they've decided it's not going to happen. So now they're saying, do you have an acceptable ID? Right? And it just lists Real ID. I think
They're not going to charge you for it, right?
and they're going to charge you for it. And speaking of which, you're going to have to use your phone to do it because they don't have any kiosk where you can pay that $45. So it has to be by your phone. Now, an interesting thing in the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport, which I sent Lou a picture of, is that they have a Real ID kiosk in the airport for you to get your Real ID going between the parking lot and the airport. And so it says, by appointment only. And if you show the other picture too, Lou, there we go. So this is a Real ID office that has been set up at the airport. And so, one thing that I have been thinking of is at the airport in Minneapolis, at least, they have a public area where anybody in any group can decide to take this desk and be there for a day. And it would be good with the with the TSA. Now, Lou, you can put that TSA up there because the thing is for people to know that they don't need a Real ID to fly, but they also should know that they should opt out of the TSA cameras. And the interesting thing in the flying that I have been doing as of late, they have been taking down this poster and they have been taking down the little tiny signs that sit right in front of the camera that said, you can opt out, just tell the agent, right? I've been seeing more and more airports that do not have that sign anymore. So it's like they're just, making it secret that you can opt out. But we are developing merch. So we've got some T-shirts coming to tell people on the back, so you can walk right through, and on the back it can say you can opt out of the TSA camera. So we're we are going to help people to know that they can opt out of the camera, and we hope that lots of people will go to our merch station, which is not quite online, but almost. It's almost ready, and buy a T-shirt and wear it in the airport.
This is at CCH Freedom, at CCH Freedom website, right?
Yeah.
I need one of those. Definitely. I'd happily wear one.
Okay.
So would I, especially when flying. All right, so let's just go. Renette, tell everybody how they can follow you and keep up with everything you're talking about. It's so important. And then Twyla, we'll hear from you too.
Well, I'm on Substack. It's Renette Senham's foghornexpress.substack.com. So if you just go to Substack, put Foghorn Express, you'll get me. And interestingly enough, I will be posting today about what's going on with the Wi-Fi routers, the Xfinity Shield. I'll have more details about that and what you can do and how it really works. And again, there's nobody in this nation who's not being affected by this. It does not matter whether you have a phone or a modem or not. So find me on Substack, and I give updates like this all the time.
But Renette, are you on social media?
I'm also on Instagram, Renette Senham 2.0, and I'm also on Facebook. But to be quite frank, Substack is really where I communicate the most, and then I just put up my posts from Substack onto that. But I am on Instagram, Renette Senham 2.0, because Instagram took me down when I was running for governor in California.
Of course they did. And Twyla, a very important work you're doing. How do we follow along?
Okay, so several things. Our website is cchfreedom.org, cchfreedom.org. And we have a fundraising gala coming up October 1st. We'd love to see, your people to come as we're having a guy from Canada come and talk about all the lives he's saved from the socialized medicine system. But also on the Real ID issue, go to refuserealid.org, refuserealid.org. And regarding HIPAA, you can find my book there, Big Brother in the Exam Room, The Dangerous Truth About Electronic Health Records. And you can also find different handouts on HIPAA, including 5 different ways that you will be presented the HIPAA form and how you can opt out in a way that they just really can't refuse by using your phone and putting the HHS website on there. So cchfreedom.org is our main space. We are on social media. And if we now have a new Substack called the Health Freedom Dispatch. And I think making a case for health freedom is going up today, but we have some stuff on Real ID and also on health freedom in a variety of different venues.
Fantastic work. You're both Jay and Carolyn. Remind everyone about Solari, please, and how we subscribe and why we should subscribe.
Yeah, Solari.com, Solari.com. And I will also say, be careful. If you search for Catherine Austin Fitts, you're going to get imposter sites. We do have everything that we do is in the name of Solari. So, I mean, yeah, you can find real interviews of Catherine, but she does not have emails that you can, Catherine Austin Fitts at Proton Mail or anything like that. Go through Solari.com. Much of what we have is in front of the paywall, but if you subscribe, you'll get a whole lot more quickly, and you'll help support us. And so we encourage everybody to subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all three of you, thank you so much for just fantastic education today. I mean, slightly petrifying, but come on, everybody, this should get you absolutely out and fighting for the future. So thank you, and I hope to have you both back on again soon. Financial Rebellion.
Thank you, everyone.
The power we have is the truth.
This is the nation's leading conference.
It's so empowering to be joining together and working for our children.
Coming to CHD was the best decision that I've made probably all year.
It is a new day when senators and representatives want to associate themselves with Children's Health Defense. Why? We're telling the truth, and they know that. And because people are listening to us, and they know that.
To me, health on a political level is the most important subject. We need to raise a healthy generation.
We, the people, are waking up. We are taking back the system.
The federal government's job is not to ensure the stable legal risk for vaccine manufacturers.
Remember, we're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I can't say it any better.
We can live to see a better day where people will be healthier and where government and corporations will be forced to be more responsible.
You can't be a decent human being and know what we have now come to learn and turn your back on it and close your eyes.
My name is Celeste.
And who are you?
Dustin.
How old are you?
9.
I know I just asked you that, but now we're asking different people are watching you, so don't think I'm going crazy. And you are?
Ernesto.
Okay. All right, so this people might look at the title of this and think, that's unusual. It's becoming not unusual that pregnant women have been given the MMR. So talk to me about how that happened, how on earth you got the MMR while pregnant, which is possibly one of the worst vaccines to get while pregnant.
Well, when I was pregnant, and this is my second pregnancy, so I was questioning it as well, but my son's dad is South African, and so when I told the doctor and the nurse that, they decided that this was a vaccination that I needed because family members were from Africa. And they could bring diseases to the home that I was at risk.
So now we're blaming Africa.
Yeah, that was...
When I had my child, they were blaming India. So let's just blame anyone other than the vaccine. Okay.
Yeah. And at the time, I knew enough to question it, but I didn't know the difference between right and wrong. I just thought, oh, that's weird. My first pregnancy, I never had a vaccination. I didn't even have any medication. That the fact that they would put anything in my body at this point was odd to me. So I asked them if I could research what they were talking about first and then come back later and decide if I wanted to get the vaccination or not. And they said, we actually can't let you leave the office today until we give it to you because you could be at risk and we don't want to have the liability of saying we didn't tell you. It was a big ordeal. I had to sit in the office and try to make the decision. I said, can I look at the information that comes with the shot to educate myself and understand the risks? And they said, we can't give that to you until you decide that you're going to get the vaccination, and then you can go home with it and read it later. And so being, I don't know, silly me, I guess, I didn't think enough of the risk, and so I went ahead and did it, took the pamphlet home, and read all of the risks of it, and just absolutely died, because I knew at that point that the risk of what I did was worse than the risk of what could have happened with him had I not done it. But it was already done. And so all I could do is hope and pray that I would have a normal pregnancy and have a normal birth, and that it would pass me by. But near the end of my pregnancy, I had preeclampsia. And then when he was born with a large kidney and some hernias. And so he required surgery. They required tests on him. But before I gave birth, there was a midwife, and she told me, because I had expressed my concerns, could any of this been caused because of the vaccination I was given in my pregnancy? And she freaked out, and she said, what vaccination was that? And I said, it was the MMR, and this is what I had read, and so could this be a cause of that? And she said, have you told anybody else this? And I said, no, because I didn't think that maybe it could be, but now I'm thinking maybe this was the reason. And she said, it absolutely could be the reason, and I want you to go read, find out as much information as you can about Dr. Tenpenny, and then you need to just be aware, make your own choices from here on out. Don't get any vaccinations you don't understand for your child. That's all I'm going to tell you. And so I took her advice, and I had about a week before I was going to have him to do some research and make some decisions. And then when I had him in the hospital, before we had found out there was any issues, they wanted to do the Hep B vaccination, you know, the one that they do in the hospital before they leave. And I told them no, and they kept urging me to do it, and I kept saying no. And then finally, after day 3, they're like, well, then you have to sign this form, and before we can let you go, and we think, you know, you're like stupid mom. And I said, that's okay, you can think whatever you want, but I'll take the risk, because I've done the research, and now I know that if should anything happen, that we can take care of it at that point, but I'll take my risk. And so we left without that. Went to the doctor visits, found out all the other issues he was having, didn't do any of the vaccinations that they were asking. I decided to put it all off. I kept telling my doctor and over again I didn't want anything. We had other surgeries and things to deal with the hernias and whatnot. And by the time he was 2, I could tell there was something different with him, and would address it with my doctor, and she would basically tell me I was crazy, that there was nothing wrong with him. But my mom had been doing daycare my whole life. For 30-something years, I'd been around all kinds of kids, all ages, all manners of diseases and issues, and never had come across someone like how my son was reacting, and not even my first child. So I knew there was something different, but she wouldn't take anything further at that point. And so she just said that if there's anything off with him, we'll find out when he's like 5 and in school, and then the teachers can tell us if something's wrong. And so I just kept dealing with it, just issue after issue with him, completely delayed in all aspects, total sensory issues.
Just 1 second, I need it for 1 second. I just want to show them something. Carry on. Sorry.
That's okay. I kept asking all the doctors that we would see if there was any way possible that the vaccination, it just kept burning in my head because of the pamphlet that I had read, if there was any way that that first vaccination could have had any effect on my child and was the reason for all these issues. And no one but the midwife believed me. No one but the midwife would even listen to me. All the doctors that we would talk to, they wouldn't even write it down. No one would even take note of it or research or do anything for me. So it just caused me to do more and more research, and realized before anyone would diagnose him that he had ADHD, that I started trying to learn about Asperger's and other spectrum disorders, and just started treating him that way, got him into a gluten-free diet, was taking probiotics for him, no sugar, trying to do as much as I could.
Everything you can.
Yeah. And then finally, 9 months ago, after dealing with all the medications that they wanted me to give him. Nothing was working. You know, everyone's just acting like I'm crazy. Finally, I got to see a doctor who would refer me to a neurologist to test him. The only problem is my insurance doesn't cover anything mental. So anything having to do with autism, they don't cover. And so everything cost me out of pocket. And it was very expensive.
I think that's the problem with all of us parents have facing. It's disgusting. Can we chat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So can you tell me what your favourite thing in the world to do is?
Shoot airsoft guns.
To do what?
Shoot airsoft guns.
Shoot airsoft guns. That sounds cool. And where do you do that?
In a safe place far away from windows, or at least not aiming towards windows.
And how old are you?
9 years
Okay,
old.
well, my assessment of you is you're doing absolutely brilliantly. Everything's fine. Oh, my gosh, they're guns? Like real guns?
No, they're not real. I mean...
They're replicas.
So not very British. Not coping well with the gun situation here.
Pellet guns? Airsoft guns.
No. Pellets.
Little pellets?
Yeah. Little pellets. Okay. Well, it's lovely to meet you. You are very cute, very handsome, and you're wonderful parents. And I'm sorry that you had the MMR phone. Absolutely disgraceful. Should have never been allowed. I mean, you probably can sue. I mean, it's not being tested on pregnant women. It's absolutely barbaric that was given to you at all.
They pretty much told me I have no case because nothing's ever been documented as that's the reason why.
Even the insert of the MMR, you should never have had that with a pregnancy. Somebody messed up somewhere along the line and they can't cover it up, so we can sort that out. Now, has he signed the thing out there so I can sign it? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so it's late. You guys are amazing. He's got a great future ahead. And I'm not sure about the gun thing though.
I understand.
A little bit nervous. It's an American thing, we're just saying. Alright, love you guys, and Periscope, and we are back. It's time to tune out.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.